Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening for this very important event and topic. I'm pleased to be your host. I'm Kelly Schuler McDonald. I'm a fifth-generation Canadian of German and Estonian descent, and I'm married into an Indigenous family and community in Northern. My husband is an accomplished artist, photographer, and poet, and a long-standing supporter of empowering youth through the arts and education. I'm mother to 4 adult children and grandmother to 4 younger ones, and daughter to dynamic parents in their late 80s. Fascinated by culture and deeply concerned for children in our society, I must encourage you that we all have a role to play in the safety of the children in our lives and communities, which is why you're here, right? I've devoted much of my career to gaining understanding to support what children and their networks of support need for safety in our society. I've been an educator since I was 13, teaching music, and am a researcher, writer, creator of communication services and educational tools for youth and adults, and provide leadership and support development for innovative leaders like Cathy. I wrote a chapter on boys in Cathy's book. In my teens, I had friends who were trafficked primarily in Vancouver, and I firmly believe we need to give better attention to raising boys well, to empower them to be change makers in our culture. The risk otherwise is that little will improve for women, girls, and families without empowering our boys as cultural change makers. As executive of Brave Education, we have a team across Canada which envisions a future for children as safe, secure change makers. And our goal is to shift culture so children grow up knowing how to have healthy relationships for a healthier society. And we do this by working together with local leaders across the country. And I live between Calgary, Fort McKay First Nation, and Kelowna. I come across Cathy's work soon after hosting a series of focus groups on the subject of human trafficking in 2018. And I remember hoping our paths would cross one day. Contact her then, because I thought she must be bombarded because she's so popular and so dynamic and forward thinking. I'm going to hope that our paths cross one day. So fast forward to now, where here we are to celebrate Cathy's second edition of her book, Child Sex Trafficking in Canada and How to Stop It. Cathy's book is a must read for every adult, and the principles in her book apply globally. You probably know she's a former inner city high school teacher. Since 2014, has made over 650 presentations to more than 20,000 people. She's received many awards, accolades, and presents to government at all levels, law enforcement, community groups, at conferences, other events, and she's created her books and publications to reach more people faster. So thank you for being a part of this. And Cathy, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly. So the goal for tonight's event, obviously, is to introduce the second edition of my book, Child Sex Trafficking in Canada and How to Stop It. The principles in the book apply globally. So we're going to have an agenda tonight. We're going to, number 1, overview of the problem. Number 2, action steps. Number 3, I'll go over the book. And number 4, we have 12 amazing speakers who are going to share their work and how this book is a useful resource tool. So first of all, an overview of the problem in Canada. I was an inner city high school teacher 45 years ago where I saw the sexual exploitation of youth. For the past 11 years, I've been raising awareness about the crime of human sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and child sex trafficking. It is the fastest growing crime globally and in Canada. So human trafficking is the recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercising control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. Sex trafficking is far more common than the public realizes. If girls or boys send nudes online, sexting, for example, then receive something in exchange for those nudes, they are being sex trafficked. You think it's awesome to receive something in exchange for nudes, but do not realize the damaging implications. This is happening anywhere if youth have access to devices. So my website is beamazingcampaign.org. And I recommend you all check it out. It's a wonderful sort of teaching website, and it's one page and it's got everything on it. The second edition of my book is available there, as I mentioned, Child Sex Trafficking in Canada and How to Stop It. I have 2 new booklets, and you can order them from the website. One is for the Indigenous, I'm not for sale, and one is for public health providers. And I have a brochure that basically summarizes my book, and I'll send these to you. And what's great about this is it describes the human trafficking indicators and then the resources where you can get help. So this brochure I hand out by the hundreds, and it really works well. The brochure can actually be downloaded from my website. So I want to now introduce Harv Craven. He is the designer for all of my materials, the banner behind me, my website, my books, my booklets, brochures. If you need somebody exceptional, creative, prompt, boy, he's fast, professional, he is the best, please contact Harv. I'm going to ask Harv, please put your contact information in the chat. And could you share a word or two about what you've learned about this issue by developing the Be Amazing brand?
Thanks, Cathy. Hello, everyone. My name is Harv Craven. I'm a full-time single father of a teenage girl and the graphic designer supporting Cathy's Be Amazing campaign collateral. As I was working on the second edition of her book, I became deeply disturbed by the stark reality revealed through the statistics surrounding child sex trafficking in Canada. This issue hits very close to home and underscores the urgent need for awareness and action. I want to emphasize how vital it is for all parents and guardians to educate themselves about this crisis. A particularly important part of Cathy's book is chapter 34, entitled For Parents, for Youth, which highlights the importance of maintaining open and constant communication with our children. This is a critical strategy in helping to protect them from exploitation. Reading Cathy's book, Child Sex Trafficking in Canada and How to Stop It, is an essential step in understanding the scope of the problem and learning how we can help safeguard our children. Thank you for including me in this important conversation.
You are so welcome. And again, you're one of the main reasons I can do this. So here are the stats. 13 years old is the average age of recruitment into the sex industry. In cities, it's 10 to 12 years of age. 50 to 90% in the sex trade are Indigenous. 82% involved in prostitution had childhood sexual abuse or incest. 72% live with complex PTSD. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice or a job. 90 to 99% of prostituted persons are pimped or trafficked, so organized crime is involved. Only 1 to 5% of individuals get out of the sex industry. The majority experience mental illness, drug addiction, commit suicide, or are murdered. Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal are global sex tourism hotspots. Canada is a child sex tourism destination. The global sex trade is growing fast. It's targeting children. Children is where the money is, fueled by the internet where most of the luring is taking place. Contributing factors to a rapidly growing sex industry is globalization, unregulated technology, limited law enforcement, and very little prevention education. The good news is Canada has a new national human trafficking hotline number, 1-833-900-1010. Everybody should know it. And I want to be clear, prostitution is illegal in Canada. Sweden has a similar law or equality model as Canada. The difference is, in Sweden, men and boys have been educated to understand gender equality, and the law there is enforced. So prostitution is not accepted or normalized there. So it is possible to stop sexual exploitation. The sex industry is targeting our youth online. Schools are now recruiting grounds for gangs, even in elementary school. So what is needed to stop this crime in Canada? I just say 5 things. Number 1, the enforcement of the federal law. the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act, or PCEPA, that criminalizes the sex buyer, the profiteer and trafficker, while acknowledging that the seller of sex is a victim. Number 2, additional funding and programs to help traffic persons out of prostitution. We need, number 3, a national and provincial public awareness campaigns, plus school education, especially teaching boys not to exploit women and girls. Number 4, we need a human trafficking task force, similar to drugs and gangs. And we need an updating of provincial police policies in line with the federal PCEPA law. And number 5, we need education for Crown Counsel and judiciary. So I'm going to go to action steps. Again, I keep it simple. Learn, share, alert. Learn about the issue, share with family, friends, and contacts, and alert those in power who can do something, your politicians and your police. Number 3, the highlights of the book. So this new edition has 150 additional pages. So you can see the difference. This one's a lot bigger, a lot thicker. The new one has a lot more pages, and it has 8 new chapters. And in my new book, the second edition, I've received a lot more endorsements, and many of those people are speaking tonight. So the book is divided into 9 sections: stories, overview, health, survivors, government and legislation, challenges, solutions, the future, resources. Within each section are the chapter topics. This layout makes the book more readable. It is a textbook on the issue. I kept the book readable and practical. It is filled with strategies and tips on what to do. So the new chapters I've included, I've got a chapter on incest and a chapter told by a survivor of incest. Incest is more common than we realize, including between siblings with the advent of pornography viewing via devices. I have a chapter on trauma where I differentiate the important difference between PTSD and complex PTSD. Complex PTSD is ongoing trauma and can include generational trauma. I have 2 additional chapters on survivors, including Indigenous survivors. I have an expansion on the chapters on pornography and the research experts studying the harms of pornography. These chapters are particularly important because pornography is the fuel for the sex industry, and generally it is not being talked about. There's a chapter on brave education by Kelly Schuler, and she spoke briefly about her work and her area of focus, which is fantastic: preteens and boys. I have a chapter on the latest trends, ending with a brief chapter called A Roadmap for Recovery. The resource section is expanded with summaries of research, books, and the videos available. My publications are well researched. By writing this book, writing additional booklets, writing the brochure which summarizes the book, having a website with my presentations and interviews, and downloadable handouts, I've learned a great deal about the issue. It gives me the background and expertise to present to any group with applicable information for them to stop exploitation. I want to conclude with this statement from Dr. Jenny Sue Jessen, a survivor and member of the USA Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. In her powerful presentations, she describes being trafficked by her grandfather from age 4 to 17. She states, "We need men who are courageous in their masculinity. We need men who are co-equal, co-leaders to partner within our families. We need to teach men and boys their inherent worth and value. We need good, strong dads to raise their children to be good, strong people. So reaching men and boys is the key to end this scourge. So now we're going to go to our speakers. I'm going to ask each speaker, if you have an organization, to please, in the email, in our chat, put your contact information so anybody in the audience can contact you. Each speaker that I've asked is doing phenomenal work and is why I've asked them to share this evening. So speaking of reaching men and boys, our first speaker is Jamie Vallejo with For the One organization. Would you share about your work in North Carolina and Ecuador?
Thanks, Cathy. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Jamie Vallejo. I'm originally from Canada, Vancouver Island area, and moved to the US in 2021. So my husband and I started a nonprofit here in North Carolina last year called For the One, and we're really focusing internationally and domestically to protect children and vulnerable women from exploitation and abuse. I've been in the nonprofit sector for about 15 years now, and I do truly believe that this is the most urgent and pressing issue of our time. For sure, we cannot continue to allow children to be used for sex and for exploitation. For the One is a new organization. We're just working to get up and running and really raise those funds. But as we continue to build, we're focused on a holistic approach, really focused on prevention, intervention, and also like community collaboration. So in North Carolina, we're focused on prevention and have developed a curriculum to be piloted for boys. It's really focused on creating a place where boys can dig into what exploitation is and how it happens, while being challenged and mentored in what it means to protect others, to protect girls and women, and to never harm. In our intervention work, we're strengthening partnerships with law enforcement in Ecuador to better equip and empower officers with enhanced skills, specialized training, and so they are better able to fight against the trafficking and exploitation happening in their own communities. And for collaboration work, we're also partnering with an aftercare facility in Ecuador to enhance the capacities and competencies of staff, also provide increased opportunities for the healing and wholeness of the girls who are in their care. While it's also really important for us to focus on strengthening local partnerships, we really want to be set and grounded in a long-term sustainable and systems-based approach when we're fighting exploitation, in partnership with local governments internationally, and empowering local champions who are there, they live, they work, they have families there, and building their capacity as well to fight exploitation. So that's a glimpse of what we're doing in North Carolina and Ecuador, and certainly would love to connect with anyone. So yes, you will find my email and our website in the chat. Thanks so much.
Great. Second speaker is my hero, Tegan Marshall, who is a Vancouver Island University student, completing his honors degree in philosophy. Would you share why this issue concerns you and why you wanted to present with me at 2 global summits on stopping sexual exploitation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Cathy, and everyone for being with us this evening for this momentous moment. We are all people who long for relationships. Right? The youth long for relationships just as much as the older generations do. And so when we look at this issue, we look at the problems that we're addressing, whether that is the disconnection created by social media, which leads to pornography use, or we're looking at the absentees and brokenness of families. The answer always lies in identity and relationship. And so why am I involved in this conversation? Part of my life is living with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy spastic quadriplegia, which means I am physically bound to a chair, which also means I am physically bound to a relationship. And so when Cathy asked me to come alongside her for these summits, the biggest concern that I had was to drive home the importance and significance of relationships, whether that was in the education sector, in the recreational communities, or in families. How do we make sure that the stories we write for our young people today impact their future tomorrow? How do we equip them with skills and relationships which allow them to rise to the challenges ahead of them, so that as they interact with social media, that would not become their identity. How do we raise the next generation? These are questions that you and I are called to answer. Thank you very much.
So number 3, we've got Jane Thornthwaite. She's a retired BC MLA from North Vancouver and author. Would you share about your book and how you helped me to reach the provincial government with my advocacy work?
I'm Jane Thornthwaite, and everybody seems to be holding up books, so I'm going to be holding up my book. Unfinished Business is my book that I wrote just over a year ago, and it is a memoir of part of my political career and the work that I did on behalf of British Columbians specifically, and more detailed with regards to North Vancouver, because North Vancouver was my riding. And that's how I met Cathy, because Cathy was one of my constituents. So I'm very familiar with her work because she was one of the people that came to talk to me. Now, in answer to your question, Cathy, and I'm just going to read what she said, Jane Thornthwaite has helped me hugely with the advocacy work so that I'm effective in reaching and presenting to politicians. This book has helped me understand the current political process and culture, the pitfalls and challenges, so that a private citizen with a passion project can actually get something done. And this is one of the key parts of my book. You will notice if you do read it that it is initially designed, the first half of the book, for people that are interested in running for politics. And I talk about why it's really, really important for you to know exactly why you want to run for politics. Just saying that you want to give back or that you want to be someone is not going to cut it. You actually have to want to be able to accomplish something. So I go through all of the processes that somebody would have to do to run. But the last half of the book actually talks about my passion projects. And there was quite a few passion projects that I worked on, some successfully. In other words, I was able to bring those projects to fruition through legislation. And other ones that I worked on and couldn't get over the finishing line. But the reason why Cathy really liked my book, and in addition to giving advice on how to deal with politicians and basically what to say to them and how to convince them that your project or your passion projects are important for them to not only listen to, but act on. And the topics that Cathy was most interested in with regards to my passion projects were mental health and addictions, specifically youth as well, and the Safe Care Act, which I brought forward into government to try to get sexually exploited, as well as those youth that are either being pimped or suffering from mental health and addictions, trying to rescue them from their pimps and who's ever taken them away from their family and keep them away. And unfortunately, the Safe Care Act never got off the ground. This book does describe a lot of the pitfalls that I fell into to try to make that come around. And then the other chapter that you might be interested in is the services, or I would say lack thereof, for victims of sexual assault. And I go through a lot of the problems that we have in Canada. I was really pleased to hear your second edition, Cathy, has some tips on trying to educate Crown prosecutors. I think that's really key. There was a book that I refer to in this book called Trials on Trial that talks specifically about how difficult it is to get these issues to trial, let alone get anybody convicted. So I would encourage anybody, if they're interested in advocacy for all levels of government. I was actually a school trustee before I was provincial MLA. So I'm shocked that you're having difficulty getting to school trustees. But I'm really shocked. I can't believe it. But in either case, the book will give you some tips on how to advocate for whatever you're specifically working on, and how to really convince elected officials that this is one of the, if not the most important topic in Canada today.
Wow. Thank you, Jane. Okay, speaker number 4, Manjot Kaur, director of the Core Movement in Surrey, BC. Would you share about your amazing grassroots work raising awareness in your community to stop sexual violence?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manjot Kaur, and I'm one of the directors at the Core Movement Foundation. It's truly an honor to be here tonight in support of Cathy and all the work she does. So our organization started in 2019 as a small platform where survivors of sexual and domestic violence could share their experiences anonymously, but it quickly grew into something much bigger. Today, we're a global network of thousands of volunteers, which includes lawyers, counselors, and just everyday people who simply want to help. We assist survivors through every stage of their healing, may that be connecting them with trusted professionals, offering emotional support, or even financial support, specifically for like cost of therapy, transportation and childcare during legal proceedings, or short-term housing and groceries. But our work isn't just about support, it's also about education. In the South Asian communities and many others, issues like sexual and domestic violence are still seen as a taboo, and the silence around these issues causes real harm. And that's why we work to raise awareness about difficult but essential topics like financial abuse, boundaries, consent, and teaching young children about good touch, bad touch. And that brings me to why this book is so important. I appreciate that Cathy begins with the voices of victims of human trafficking. It offers a window into their lived experiences, the confusion, the pain, and the incredibly difficult decisions that they have to make. And it helps the reader understand rather than judge them. And it's resources like that that don't just inform, but rather like humanize the crisis. They challenge us so we reflect, we care, and we do better. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this important moment.
Thank you, Manjot. So number 5, we've got Lynn Kent, who's the president of the National University Women's E-Club. Would you share about your work and interest in this issue to protect women and girls?
Thank you, Cathy. Yes, as well as that, I am also a board member for the University Women's Club of Vancouver, and where I have been a member of the Status of Women and Human Rights Committee that has really been addressing this issue since 2010, when we were alerted to the problem coming to Vancouver with the Olympics. We were then founders, along with several other Vancouver groups, of VCASE, the Vancouver Collective Against Sexual Exploitation. And I've been a member of the Be Amazing campaign under Cathy's leadership as well. I attended Mission Fest a couple of times and the UBCM a couple of times with Cathy. She is an awesome teacher from whom I have learned a lot to advance the advocacy and lobbying on this issue. And that's been my main contribution, has been building awareness, advocating, lobbying government politicians, being a witness at the Justice Institute. And Cathy's books actually, are really a critical resource full of valid statistics, stories, quotes, information, where to find out more information, hugely valuable to any advocate who wants to convince others of the importance of addressing this issue. So thank you, Cathy.
Great. And Lynn has been such an encourager and supporter for years. So now I've got 2 women from Nova Scotia, the east coast of Canada. It's so awesome to have Linda McDonald and Jean Sarson here. They are registered nurses from Nova Scotia. They are United Nations participants. They are authors, educators. Would you each share about your global work and your books? These 2 women speak about a deeper level of sexual exploitation and trauma that no one talks about.
Thank you, Cathy, and thank you for your powerful book on child sex trafficking in Canada. It's important to have a national perspective. Jean and I are thrilled that we're referenced and included in your book. So we started in 1993, Jean and I did, in Nova Scotia with one woman who identified as being tortured by her family, and we've now talked to thousands of women all around the world. supporting Some to Heal, educating, and we're grassroots activists working around legislation. And we've developed grassroots science. We call ourselves Persons Against Non-State Torture. That's a campaign that we started. And we have a website. I'll put that in the chat later. We also have our first book was Women Unsilenced. We wrote this in 2021. And it is quite comprehensive about our grassroots science and includes many stories of women and who were tortured and trafficked from the time they were small. People ask us what non-state torture is, so I'll just read the definition because it's kind of long, but it'll give you a sense because we're wanting you to really understand the crime and the human rights violation. So non-state torture is torture that occurs in the domestic or private sphere, in relationships perpetrated within families, human trafficking, in prostitution, pornographic exploitation, by violent groups and gangs, dismissed as social, cultural, traditional, or religious acts, and can be committed during migration, displacement, and in humanitarian or civil unrest. So that really gives it in a nutshell, and then Jean will go through some more details about our work. So thank you again for everyone. I'm very proud to be from the east coast of Nova Scotia to have both sides of Canada covered.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Cathy, for having Linda and I here to share. What you said was absolutely correct. We go to places where others have not gone, into the whole reality of non-state torture victimization that has been silenced not only in Canada, but globally around the world, because it affects millions of women and girls. And because we go where no one goes, our suggestions are a bit different because we began learning that human trafficking and non-state torture starts within families and it can begin with babies. So when our suggestion about education, we have to say that we should expand the community's knowledge that victimization can begin very, very young, and the perpetrators are usually known, those who are victimized. So it's important also to share why we don't use the word sex trafficking, because sex is not appropriate when you're thinking about babies and you're thinking about young children, and what you said, Cathy, around a 4-year-old. So the whole issue of human trafficking is a crime. And as you said too, Cathy, organized crime, because you can't traffic and else there's buyers. Outside of that, there's no business. So it's very important to understand that adult entertainment is not adult to adult. It can happen anytime after an infant is born. So as Linda said, the issue non-state torture is a place where others have fairly not gone. So the issue of consent, you can never consent to torture, because sometimes we're asked that question about consent. So it's important to know, and that young people know, if they're being tortured, you cannot consent to being tortured. So you never have to consider that somebody can tell you you consented to being tortured. And the final little comment I would add, because Cathy, you said we had 2 books, and our second book is coming out, and it's talking about healing. The book invites people to come with us. There's 19 chapters in it of home visits with Lynn. Lynn was an adult. She was not victimized as a child, but it was her husband who married her with the intent, with 3 other men, to hold her captive, torture her, and exploit her into prostitution in a Canadian province. So this happened in the 70s, so this is a long-standing crime, and our book goes back to 1910 and talking about human trafficking, which they call the white slave trade. So the book invites people to come with us for the 19 chapters of home visits with Lynn during her healing. And then we explain more about the crime and the corruption that goes on and who the perpetrators are. So with that, Cathy, it's a thrill to be able to go where no others have gone and that you've opened the door to invite people to also join. So thank you very much for the invitation and for including reference to us in your book.
Well, again, you two are just so tremendous. It's just really wonderful work you are doing. So, speaker number 8, we've got Jen Graham from Children of the Street, Plea Community Services. Would you share about your amazing BC province-wide prevention education work? And I've always said, I mean, Diane Sowden started it. But I mean, I've always said it's the best program in the country. So I wonder if you could speak to it. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I will. I will start with Diane's story. So thank you, Cathy, for that nice intro. So Diane set up Children of the Street 30 years ago when her own child, Catherine, was being exploited, and she was looking for support in the province of BC and anywhere in Canada and couldn't find any. And so she decided that she didn't want any other parents or children to go through what her and Catherine were going through. And so she decided to set up Children of the Street. She retired 27 years later in 2019 after dedicating most of her life to this work. And her program transitioned to Plea Community Services, which is where me and my team come in. So our work is we go into schools every day. We do about 3 workshops a day in schools all around BC. We have 4 workshop presenters who present in teams of 2 in those schools. And last year they reached 49,000 BC school-aged population with their preventative education. That number sounds impressive, and of course we're incredibly proud, but it is just 7% of BC's school-aged population. So there's still so many more kids that need to hear this message and need to learn how to keep themselves safe. The other work that we do is we support parents have those tough conversations with children about how they those tough and tricky conversations about how to stay safe online, how to be a safe person for if they need to come forward to tell them what's going on for them. So I want to talk a little bit about Cathy's book, because if you haven't read it, it's like taking small bites of a really large, complex meal. It breaks incredibly complex issue, makes it really, really digestible, especially for those who have perhaps not in as deep as some of the speakers, are into that issue today. So if you want to get a really good overview of the issue in a digestible format, then I really would recommend that you give this book a read. And if you would like to see Children of the Street in your children or grandchildren's schools, or if you'd like us to present to your any parents or grandparents that you know, I'll put my contact details and the website in the chat and you can reach out to me. And thanks, Cathy.
Great. Excellent, Jen. Then we've got Tiana Sharafi, our number 9 speaker from Exploitation Education. Would you share how you are building a culture nationally that stops exploitation before it starts?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you, Cathy, for having me featured in your book and for having me speak on this topic. And also, thank you for writing a book on this issue. There is not one to date of this nature. So very grateful for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiana Sharifi Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of Exploitation Education. And to speak to your question, Cathy, about how we're changing the culture. So I've been working in this space for over a decade now. And about 5 years ago, I looked at what are the gaps in prevention education, and I wanted to address those. And so something that I noticed is that we're not really addressing sexual exploitation at its root, human trafficking at its root. So I developed about 5 years ago these prevention programs, and the way that we're addressing culture is by looking at the root causes of exploitation. We also look at the psychology behind the vulnerability of becoming a victim, as well as perpetrating exploitation, because of course we can address victimization, but we can't really change the issue unless we address the demand, and especially with our young boys growing older and shifting the culture that they live in, especially with social media and the internet. And for us, the root causes of exploitation means that we look at what is consent, what's the value of consent, how do we implement it in everyday relationships? What does that look like in person and digitally? What are healthy boundaries? And really getting our next generation to value why it's critical to have it in every type of relationship that they have. The second piece is that we also want to start de-glamorizing the commodification of people, something that's very much been normalized in social media, influencer culture, platforms like OnlyFans and things like that. And so again, we're addressing these issues. We have student prevention education programs that are supported by BC's Ministry of Education and are reaching across Canada. So last year, our prevention presentations reached over 50,000 students. And we have many school district contracts, for example, the Vancouver School Board, Abbotsford, and even Ontario's, what is it called? Oh my goodness. Toronto's School Board. So we do that. And then in addition, because a lot of this is in the digital space and this is a global issue, we realize that really addressing the root cause of exploitation can't just be limited to a region. It's something that is international and affects everybody. So we developed the first ever online curriculum for school districts, and it's implemented across Canada. We have it in Ontario, in Winnipeg, and in BC as well. Vancouver School Board, again, is another district that has implemented it. And then on top of that, we do collaboration. So we created the Prevention Project, and you can visit at the Prevention Project. And it's over 100 pieces of educational materials that we scripted for free that are animated, and from grade 3 all the way to grade 12. And we're going to be implementing that into our parent platform that is coming up in a month as well, because we can't really prevent exploitation and educate our kids if we're not educating the trusted adults in their lives. So that's kind of what we have going on right now. The Prevention Project has reached over 81 different countries, even though it was intentionally built for Canada without doing any outreach for it. I don't know how people found out, but they did, and they're using it, which is really great. And yeah, so we're going to be starting a parent platform. And just on a personal level, I'm very much utilizing my social media, my expertise on my social media, and I've reached over 4 million parents across Canada and the US, just trying to educate them on how do you have open conversations and, like Tegan said, build relationships and have connection with your kids. So I think actually I did. I shared my website. You can visit that, and the Prevention Project is listed on there if you want more information about our online curriculum, the projects that we're doing. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you, Tiana. I mean, it's these young ones. You're right, Pam Chapman. It's the young ones with all the energy. It's just really great, especially being in the digital space. I mean, that's a big difference. I mean, sure, I've written a book, but Tiana's gotten into the digital space. It makes a huge difference. I know Manjot with the core movement has had a lot of success with Instagram. So that's really worked. Number 10 speaker is Julia Nykarts, Director of Instruction. Would you share about your interest, concern, and action about this issue in your northern BC school district? And Julia is from Terrace.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Cathy, for inviting me today. And thank you so much for putting the work in and publishing a book. I'll start by saying I didn't know anything, and I found the book, and I found Cathy, and then I found a path. And I think when you have a path, there is hope, and that's what we all need. I believe that we can stop sex trafficking. I believe that if we work together collectively and not in silos, we can change the outlook for youth. But it takes us working collectively and collaboratively. And if I hadn't have read the book, if I hadn't have connected with Cathy, and thank you, Cathy, for picking up the phone, being on calls with me, and connecting me to the right people. So Cathy's not only there just with the book. Cathy, you can reach out to her. She's willing to talk to you. She's willing to help. And I think I would have felt very lost had I not have had this lifeline and guidebook to help me. I've been in education now for over 30 years, and I didn't anticipate having to work and deal with the topic of sex trafficking. And it's been a difficult journey, because when you start to shine the light onto a very dark topic, you begin to realize that it's been there for a long time, and it's affected a large majority of people that you didn't realize, and things that could have been explained away for other reasons, you realize it was sex trafficking that was causing that problem. We've had numerous deaths in our community where students have discontinued and were no longer counted in numbers, and so therefore they passed away. And when that happens, when you have what Paul Brandt says, you're awakening to this topic, and I think all of us have had that, and that's why we're here. You never stop, and you will continue to advocate and do what you can. So I've been an ongoing mission to make sure that every youth within the school district has ongoing education and understanding and prevention, right from grade 3, 6, all the way up to grade 12. But it always feels like we rely on our youth to understand everything and receive all of that information. And so I wanted to make sure the entire community had knowledge, understanding, and could be part of the prevention. So we've held community meetings with Northern Health, MCFD, RCMP, school district staff, parents, and community. We all had to have a baseline foundation on what does this look and feel like for children and youth in Northern BC, and then take that into our own system, our own space, and view it through a different lens and understand what we need to do for prevention. And it was fabulous to see Northern Health start to create change in their system, the RCMP starting to take things on board and create change. And so that it wasn't just youth we were educating, it was the entire community. When we educate students and communities, something powerful can happen, and kids start to recognize that they have champions and their voice is being heard and what they say is real. If we don't do that, they're too frightened because they're in a very, very scary, vulnerable situation where death can actually be real. Families started to have conversation. Teachers and community members knew what to watch for. We saw, and I think this is the piece that is super exciting, because the community came together, people started to go to the RCMP. People started to share stories. We had increased level of arrests. We had people incarcerated. We had success in removing some of the known traffickers in our community gone. Does it mean that sex trafficking has disappeared out of our community? No. But we have knowledge, we know that we can create change, and now there's a sense of hope. Thank you, Cathy.
No, that's really wonderful how you've reached out to the whole community. Very powerful. Number 11, we've got Cathy Peters with Risen Foundation from Alberta. Would you share about your remarkable and successful outreach to the exploited in your community and globally?
Thank you, Cathy. It's an honor to be here. My name is Cathy Peters, and I established the Risen Foundation. We're committed to combating sex trafficking in all forms of commercial exploitation. Two ways: shifting culture and reaching out. So on the outreach side, we go directly to women and children currently caught in exploitation. That's my heart. I'm a mom, and we just offer them a compassionate pathway to freedom and healing. We visit places like strip clubs, massage parlors, brothels, hotels, and we also do online outreach to connect with those in need. Every encounter is rooted in trust, and we carry a deep belief in each person's worth, regardless of their circumstance. We bring essential resources like gift bags with toiletries, offer immediate help if they want it, and connect individuals with ongoing support. As the leader of our outreach team in Central Alberta, I've experienced firsthand how pure love and kindness can break through the darkest situations. We offer counseling, prayer, massage therapy, art therapy, and equine therapy. We don't just aim to help people escape exploitation. I want to see them fully healed and empowered to live a fulfilled life. So over the years, we've had hundreds of divine encounters with young women. One that I will never forget was an evening. It was freezing out. It was -40. I wasn't feeling very well and wasn't sure what to wear to outreach that night. I quickly prayed, threw on my brown coat, winter boots, no makeup, put a toque on my head, and we walked into the strip club, and a girl saw me and shouted, "You're the lady from my dream. You're the lady in my dream. I'm supposed to receive everything you have for me." And I'm totally stunned. And she was from Montreal, trafficked by her husband, and just happened to be working in Alberta that night. Well, you can imagine she wept as I handed her a gift bag and shared, just words of truth and encouragement, and it just pierced her heart deeply that night. And so it was one of those powerful reminders, even small moments when filled with love can ignite courage and spark real change in people's lives. So thank you for each one of you for all of your work, and thank you for letting me share.
Again, Christy, you're just amazing. So we're going to end. Number 12 speaker is a very, very special friend, Dr. Pam Chapman. She is a senior, very senior social worker from the U.S. Would you share about your decades of work assisting the hurting, the damaged, and the very vulnerable, and why you helped me get my book done?
It is such an honor to be here, and so awesome that we are coming from both sides of the border. I'm just really, really happy to be here. So I have a master's in social work, and then I have my doctorate in counseling and in theology. And I am both a licensed chaplain and an LCSW. So one of the things that's exciting for me with Cathy's work, and I just have been enthralled with it since the very first moment that I met her, is that she has written a book and come up with ideas that can absolutely help us to transform the people that we meet who are in trouble. I view this as a resource book and a educational vehicle for myself and for everyone that I come into contact with. My work with people who are sexually abused and who are trafficked is from the adult side. I've been a psychotherapist for many, many years and then also a chaplain, and have come into contact with people, women especially, but also men who were victims of violence and sexual abuse, who held it inside and never felt the ability or the acceptance out in the real world to be able to talk about it. And the shame that surrounded them and their lives was just devastating and ended up in very serious mental illnesses. And I believe that encounters like this one, and hearing the healing energy and hearing what you are doing, if we can get this out into the whole world, will take some of that shame away and allow people to begin the whole time of sharing. And I know all of you, all of us, already have an outreach of a type, but I know that there's many other people who will be listening to this as time goes on. And I just want everyone who's here and everyone who listens to it in the future to realize that we all can make a huge impact. And I love Cathy's easy step-by-step learn, share, alert. And this book will give you everything that you need to know to be able to learn and share and alert others and how they can really make a huge difference. One of my favorite things about this book, being a social worker, is that there are resources galore. Resources galore where you can be learning more, and also resources galore where you can refer the people that you meet. And Christy, your story about being like literally the angel that walked in with your toque on and your brown coat. We don't have to look any particular way. We just need to show up, and the right people will always be there. I think that there is a magic in us just being ourselves and just being real. And I also wanted to just comment a little bit more about some of the things that Tegan said, because I thought Tegan was just so powerful, as all of you are. But he just kind of broke things down in such a simple, amazing way that, through relationships and family, through recreation. There's saving factors in all of those different relationships and the communications that happen in them. And if we can reach people who work in recreation at schools, in Cathy's book, she talks about me, and it truly was a recreation therapist when I was a young child who really helped form my life and form the good direction that I went on. A lot of my friends went into drugs, and a lot of people, I think, did have really bad exploitive experiences. But I really found like a strength in community at the recreation center, from the coachee at my school. And if we can educate families, if we can educate community centers, if we can educate everyone that we come into contact about this. And Cathy's given us the tools. I love not only her book, but I love all of her handouts. And I think, Cathy, we need to, all of us who are here, because I'm sure we're all going to be on fire after today, to just be armed with a lot of these so that we can pass them out, spread the word. This is an international problem, and we can have a voice that will really help to make a promise and a difference in that. I just thank you, Cathy, for your phenomenal work. It's readable. It's actually painful and hard reading, but it's also easy reading. It makes sense. It's digestible. And actually, another tool would be to have more people in your circle read the book. So thank you. Thank you all. You're all doing such amazing work. I will continue in my therapeutic practice and in my chaplaincy to continue to learn and grow so that I can educate and help and alert as well. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Pam, and everyone. Time's up. So it concludes our book launch event. Please buy a book or two. That's a very good intro for anyone.